I'm Dennis Streeter at Desai Solutions, and I'm here today with Greg Dawes. Greg, welcome aboard.
Thanks, Dennis.
We're going to be going through a couple of different topics here today over the course of 30 to 45 minutes on protecting your intellectual property, what that might mean to your company, and areas that SolidWorks Data Management Solutions can assist you with that. And we're going to have a number of different poll questions coming up throughout the presentation, as well as you'll have the opportunity to ask us questions in the chat window. We do have everybody on mute right now, so we'd ask that, again, if you do have any questions, throw them down in the chat window, or if you're having any issues hearing us or seeing information, you might want to log off and log back on again, or send us a message and we'll make sure that you get an archive of this also. As well as people that might want to attend but not able to from your company, let us know and we can get you an archived copy of the webinar after the event. Greg, should we maybe get started with a couple of poll questions here to start with?
Sounds good.
All right. Let me start out with beginning one here. Give us a little, these first couple questions are just to get a little bit of insight into where you folks are coming from is regarding to intellectual property and some of the concerns that you have coming in here. So if you want to take a quick look at this, we'll leave this poll up here for 30 seconds or so, give everybody a chance to reply. As we start to see responses coming in, we'll begin to wind that down here. And we're basically just asking if you have some method right now in place today for managing your intellectual property. Results are coming in here, so, and the numbers are jumping up. We're getting close to 80% of the folks replying here. And wind this down in about 10 seconds here. Get on to the next one. So if you haven't replied yet, please do that. And we'll share those results also once we wrap this up. All right. Let's close that and we'll share those results. So it looks like a pretty good mixture between people that don't have anything today, but equally distributed between those who do and have something that they're starting to get in process. So hopefully we'll be adding a lot of value to those folks that are beginning to look at this. Next question here. Oops, let me close the poll. We'll bring up our next one before we get started with Greg's information. This is a little bit of a, maybe just a quick pulse on how much of the data that you think you create in your company that you would consider to be classified or important for your business moving forward. What do you think is intellectual property percentage in the company today? And looks like we have a lot of people jumping right on that, so we might close this poll out a little bit faster. Greg, have you had any experience on this in the past talking to customers?
Yeah, it seems to be that for the most part, anything that's an engineering drawing that's been released, that's considered intellectual property.
Yep, I'd agree. It tends to be those drawings, right? Those tend to be the gospel for most of our customers on where the value of their designs lie.
Yeah, kind of the document of record.
Yep. I think maybe as time goes on, we'll find models take over that role a bit more as we get into subjects like MBD and so forth. But today, drawings definitely are the leader there. Let's close this out and I'll share the results. Looks like kind of an equal mix across the top three categories at least, and 100%. I'd be a little bit shocked if everybody said 100% of what they are creating today is considered intellectual property or classified. So I think that kind of falls in line with my impression. How about you, Greg?
Yep.
All right. Well, let's knock this off and get into the presentation here.
All right, Dennis, just for so I know everybody can see it, can you see the back to my screen?
I'm good here.
Okay, great.
If anybody's having any problems, maybe you can make a note in the chat window or raise your hand.
Again, my name is Greg Dawes. I'm an application engineer with Desai Solutions, and I've been dealing with SOLIDWORKS PDM for quite a while now. I do a lot of the pre-sales demonstrations of what can PDM do, and I also do quite a bit of the implementations for PDM as well. I think that the tagline for this webinar is, Dennis came up with, I think is a really good one, getting the right data to the right people at the right time. And each of the topics that we're going to go over is going to either address what particular data, who the people are, or what time do they see it. So that's a great tagline for this intellectual property and who can access it and when. So the topics that we're going to cover, I'm going to cover 4 different topics here, really focusing on the idea of intellectual property and access to the data. So we'll cover accessing the vault, just getting to the vault in the first place. How do we get to it? We've got a lot of really unique customers that have different requirements for how they access the vault, whether they want everyone to be on site in the building, whether they have traveling field technicians that need to be get into the vault, sales folks who may be traveling that also need to get into the vault. What are our options for that while still keeping it secure? Then we're going to talk a bit about users and groups. This is probably the shortest section because it's just what needs to be set up to set up a secure environment. We need to be able to define users and define groups of users within a role, and then that way we can assign them permissions, which is our next topic, per their role within the company. So then there's permissions, and permissions, I hit this at like an overall, kind of a 10,000 foot overview of permissions, because we can get really detailed, and that's kind of what I want to go over. We can get really detailed and granular about how we assign permissions, whether that's per person, per group, what step of the process are we in within the design. And we can also do it just by really simple things like folder. And then kind of a miscellaneous at the end that I thought would be really good to talk about are some tool sets that we have available, or some check marks within the software that really help with being able to set up for regulatory compliance. Think ISO, ANSI, FDA, even some ITAR things that we can be able to help with compliance for those regulations. So first up would be accessing the vault. And I'm going to go over a bunch of different ways to access the vault. I'll try to demo a few of the ways to get into the vault too, and some options we have for remote users and those types of things. So the basics of it are that we have a few different clients that that the end user will log into the vault and access data from. We have a thick client, which I'm showing in this picture here. So this is installed on a computer, a laptop, or a desktop machine. And they access it just like you would through Windows Explorer. Then we have a thin client, which is actually, you can think of that as just a web client as well. We can set this up as a web client. Now the web piece of this is hosted locally on your own servers. We don't host this site through SOLIDWORKS or through Desai. This is through your own internal website, so you can go ahead, your IT people will be happy that they can apply their own firewalls because it's on their web server. But the user interface is all pre-designed, so there's not a whole lot of configuration that has to happen to be able to set up a web viewer. If you use Chrome, you probably recognize that I'm accessing the vault through Chrome, Google Chrome, but this can be set up for Chrome or Firefox, Internet Explorer, you name it, it's just a portal to be able to access it from. And along with that thin client, the web client, we also provide a mobile version. And you can look at that actually through the like desktop browser down in there at the bottom. You can swap it over to a mobile version. But I just took some screenshots here of actually my phone accessing the vault. What's really neat about this is that we also have e-drawings available for iOS and Android devices too. So not only can we access the data through the web client of PDM, but we can also grab components and open them up in eDrawings. So we have eDrawings, the free viewer, and also eDrawings Professional available for mobile devices, meaning that if I have eDrawings Professional, I can open up a component, I can take measurements off of it, I can do section views, I can view the feature tree, all through a mobile device. And again, I always like to wrap this up with this: the server, the web server piece, is hosted on your site. So you do not need to worry about the security. As long as your IT team can lock down the firewalls to that web server, you're in control of that. And then a couple of just random thoughts that I thought I'd throw in here that has been useful in the past is some terminal server support. So we have, I just did this with a company, and their implementation just a couple of months ago is that they had a terminal server to save on Windows licensing for the shop floor. So basically they have one computer out on the shop floor, but they wanted multiple users to be able to log into it. So we do support terminal server and installing the thick client on a terminal server. That means Bob and Jill and Garrett can all log into the same machine with their particular credentials and participate in, they would have their own logins, so they would have their own view of the data depending on what, how they logged in with their own credentials. Some keys here is that to access the vault, you must be on a local network, so you must be inside the company unless you're VPNing in to the network or you're using Web 2. So another layer of security there. You're providing a VPN connection into it. That's another layer of them logging in with credentials to be able to access the data. And then I thought something that would be a little fun is that, Dennis, I know that you know that we Desai employees also use PDM. And we use it for the sales process, keeping track of customers, almost a little bit like CRM-ish. But how do we access the Desai company vault? I know I'm in Angola, Indiana. Dennis, you're in Western Michigan there. We have employees from California, Arizona, Indiana, Michigan, all over the place. So how do we all get access to the same vault? So what we do is we have a remote desktop connection to our vault and a kind of a terminal server idea. So this is just remote desktop, and I've saved my credentials into here. As soon as I hit connect, it's going to connect to the Desai PDM vault in my area of the server. And if you guys use SOLIDWORKS PDM, or if you've seen a demo of it, you'd be really familiar with this Blueberry. So now I've logged into the vault. My credentials are saved into this specific area of the server, and I can access the PDM vault from here. So I thought just something a little fun on how we use it internally and how we access it, even though we have a ton of remote employees. Dennis, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think a couple of great points there, Greg. One of the things that we're doing with this webinar series throughout the year, we're going to have a number of different subjects, intellectual property being the first one, but we're going to try and tie together the concerns that the end users in engineering have for data management, together with maybe the concerns that your management team might have, or maybe they don't know that they have, that help to solve common business challenges. So you've brought up a couple of great points here, Greg, that come into play for Desai by limiting the views that our employees have and the access that we have to the vault. We've created a secure environment for all of our customer information and the documentation that we consider to be proprietary and important to us that we present with our prospects and our customers. So in a similar way, as a manager, I'm feeling pretty good that I've got one location that I can direct all of my staff to that they're going to go to for information. They're not going to be jumping over to a lot of different areas on a server, maybe some information that they might keep on their workstation. If those people are traveling, that exposes that information to be acquired illegally or by accident. I know we've got a lot of companies that do ITAR work, as you had mentioned, Greg, and securing that data becomes a critical issue, as well as just the value to companies in general. So we'll take a quick look at another poll here, and let me turn that on. Ask real quickly, bring up the question on how do you share your information today? If you could answer that, that'll give us a little bit of insight. And if we see any trends, perhaps we can talk about that here as we transition from topic to topic as well. We're going to have a couple more poll questions as we go along at the end of some subjects, and we'll wrap up with one final one at the end of our presentation, just to kind of give you an idea on what to expect as we move forward here. So we have the responses coming in here. Give it about another 15 seconds and we'll post those results. Give everybody a little bit of a heads up as we start to wind this down. Looks like the majority of people tend to share their information via email. Let's close this and I'll share the results for you. So that's how it broke down on how you're sharing information today. So I think we've seen a lot of different cases where email maybe is not the most secure way, perhaps. Something like a Web2 interface, even setting up for people that you collaborate with that might not be in the company, could be something that adds another degree of security for you. I don't know, your thoughts on that, Greg?
Yeah, I think something that people who start to use Web2 or even giving clients VPN access to their vault with a specific login that is really is pretty restrictive is that you can turn off the ability to download files. So they can access the vault and they can view files within PDM, but they are not able to download them. Once you've sent something out in an email, they can do anything they want with it. It's theirs. They can download it, they can share it, they can reverse engineer it. So it really depends on who you're sending it to, if it's and how you want them to access it. What level of access do you want? We provided areas to be able to control that. Email, it's as soon as you send it out, it's theirs.
Yep, great point there. And you know, I know that we do a lot of NDAs or non-disclosure agreements as a company that works with our customers' information and the designs that they're working on. We respect those agreements, you know, wholeheartedly, and our management team signs off on those. Hopefully, you have something very similar with your suppliers and your customers, that you're holding them to an agreement. Otherwise, email gets to be very risky, in my opinion. So let's hide the results of that, and we'll move on to the next subject.
So just to put a bit of a bow on accessing a vault, the big tagline you should take from that is that it's secure, yet it's flexible. We have a lot of different avenues to be able to access the vault, but they're all secure through creating users and groups and assigning permissions through those. So speaking of those two topics, let's head to users and groups. The two logos that I have on here, users and groups here, this is the exact, I just captured this, took a little snipping tool and captured it out of one of my sample demo vaults, and it's exactly what it looks like inside of there. You create individual users that have individual logins, and then to make it a lot easier to assign permissions and things, we assign those to groups. So a little bit more about that. These users can be PDM specific, meaning that the login name and the user itself is stored within the PDM software, or what a lot of our, I'd say most of our customers decide to do is if they're using Active Directory to manage their users and groups within Windows and Microsoft, that you can tie these to Active Directory. Some neat things that you can do with that then is have automatic logon. I know something that's tedious and frustrating for me is that if I have to log in to like 8 different systems in a day just to get my job done, it can be frustrating. So this allows that once they've logged into their machine, that as soon as they double click that little blueberry on the desktop to get into the vault, it uses the credentials that they've already logged into their machine for the day to get into the vault. So provide some flexibility there to just, you don't have to create a bunch of new users. You can just use the ones that are already in Active Directory. Then for groups, it's pretty simple with groups. They're sets of users. A couple of things that should be noted is that users can be a member of multiple groups. So the example I give is usually there's someone on the engineering team who's kind of the power user for PDM. So they might be a part of the engineering group where they have tasks like check in, check out, to be able to edit files, but they also need to be able to get in and change data cards, or they need to be able to edit the workflow, the process in which people push files through. So they might also be a part of the administrators group. So users can be a part of multiple groups just depending on what hats they wear during the day. And groups just allow for a much easier application of permissions based on a role within the company instead of doing individual users, and especially when you're talking larger companies, that can get a bit tedious if you're assigning specific permissions to individual users. And what this allows us to do, this is really the backbone of the security of it. We can get reports based on users. We can see who's checked in or checked out files, who's pushed files through the process or the workflow within PDM, and be able to have an audit history of that happening. We'll talk a little bit more about that later when we talk about regulations. And really the wrap up there, Dennis, if you have anything to add, please do, is that we can granularly define users and roles, but groups allow us to really easily apply permissions across the board.
Yeah, I think to me, as representing a management point of view on this, that's kind of the key point to me. I know who the people in my company are that should have access to different types of information, and being able to have a guaranteed way of controlling that just adds to that level of security and protection for my intellectual property. And that can be a huge advantage when you're talking to your management team that you can bring to the table with SOLIDWORKS PDM, I think. I think that's the main takeaway that I've got from this subject, Greg.
Sure. So on to the next topic, we'll talk about permissions, and this is where we'll get down and dirty with configurability per company. PDM is a software that a ton of companies use, but all of these companies are really unique in the way they get from a request for a quote all the way to producing and shipping that part to a customer. So the tool set is that the permissions that we assign for either users or more easily groups are 4. We have administrative privileges, where this is deciding who can configure how the vault works. Things like adding variables to the vault, editing those variables, changing the workflow, editing data cards, creating these data cards that hold metadata information for each one of these files, really just administrative tasks. Then there are folder permissions. What's unique about these folder permissions, what makes it pretty easy, but again, very specific, is that when we apply folder permissions, which are things like can they even see what's in this folder, read, checkout, can they write to that file, can they edit that file while it's in this folder, is that they apply when we select maybe this top level demo folder, and we check read, it actually applies to every subfolder and subfolders within subfolders all the way down until we explicitly pick a subfolder and turn that ability off. Then it does it all over again. It'll pick, if we do that with the design data folder, it'll go to the components folder and turn that as not being able to read files from there as well. Then we have state and transition permissions. So if you're not familiar with PDM, this is just a sample workflow that files could go through within PDM. So as soon as we toss files into a vault, it goes into this under editing state. All of these tan boxes are states, and for each of these states we can set permissions when a file's in this state. So things like read and check out. And you'll notice that we have the same types of permissions for folders and states when it comes to reading the file contents that are in there and being able to check out a file, basically take write access to the file and edit it. That provides us with some flexibility on, if we have an R&D folder versus a production designs folder, they could go through the same workflow, but you're going to have a mix of folder permissions and state permissions on whether or not they can read that file. So something in the R&D folder that's in under editing, maybe the shop floor can't see, but something that's also in under editing, but in the production designs folder, maybe the shop floor could see. So it provides us a really flexible abilities for read and write access. And then transitions, those are the simple ones. It's just a yes or no. Can a group or a user participate in this transition? And the transitions on this screen are anything that's not in that tan box. So we have submit for approval, and we have no approval required. Maybe only the management team, the engineering manager, and the admins can skip the approval process. Everyone else would need to go through this submit for approval. And what's nice about that is you're not going to have users that see transition options that they don't have access to. It'll just be invisible. They won't even see it. So really what I wanted the point I wanted to get across there was that the tool set that we have for assigning permissions is really adaptable, but we can set security permissions very specifically. Dennis, did you have a poll question or anything to add?
Not a poll question yet at this point. We're going to have one more after our next section here. But I think you did a nice job of kind of going into those first two topics that we talked about. And as a manager, I'm feeling even better that you've got better control over the access of data in the vault and how and what level you can go to and control and access and permissions through the different users and groups. So even if I want to share my data, what you're saying, with maybe a customer or a vendor, I can control down to a folder what they see out of my whole entire vault. They're not getting access to everything. Is that what I'm hearing you say, Greg?
Yeah, and it may be useful to kind of see how it's done. So maybe I'll jump out of the PowerPoint here and just show how we apply those four types of permissions. So I'll go to my administration window for PDM, and that's here. And then when I select on a vault, this is actually a separate login from actually logging into the user view of the vault. This is a separate login for who the to administer the vault. So I'll jump in here, and it shows the vault name. I've just called mine demo. And then we have all of these different nodes for the different things that we can do to configure the vault. The big things we've talked about so far are users, groups, and we've talked about workflows. So let's just grab a group like change control, and I'm going to right click it and open it. And that's going to show me immediately who are the members of the group, what are just the general properties of the group. And then the next section down below are those four different permission types that we can assign. So administrative permissions, folder permissions, which gives us a nice window up top to be able to individually pick folders. Remember, if you apply it at a top level, it'll apply it all the rest of the way down, unless you explicitly pick a folder below that and change it. And then state permissions and transition permissions. We can change these here, but and if that's the way your mind thinks, that's great. But I actually like to add the state and transition permissions looking at the workflow. I'm just more of a visual person. So if we go to the workflow that all of my CAD files are going through, I can just click on a state and look at the permissions, the users and groups that have been added to it, and what permissions they have by picking on these individual groups. So while it's in under editing, the engineering team can, they have a lot of flexibility when it's just in this first state of kind of a work in progress. They can check out a file, they can delete and destroy files, they can read the file contents, but once it gets down to be an approved document, we'll go down to this state of approved and pick that same group. It's really just locked down to read file contents. Once it's released, we don't want anybody changing the file. We want it to go through a change process for that to happen. So they can just read the file contents. Then we go to transitions. If we do want to make a change and go through an engineering change process, I'll go through request change, and this is really just a permit or do not permit a request for a change. So the engineering team does have the ability to right-click that file and send it through a change process where it goes through more of a formal process, and when it gets back to approved, it'll get revision bumped. So, you know, showing you a bit of a 10,000-foot overview and then a little bit more of the nitty-gritty of what an admin would do getting into the system and applying these permissions.
Yeah, that's great information, because I'm really feeling pretty good about the level of security and the fact that you can even go down to controlling the ability to just have read-only access or the ability to trigger off a change request. That gives a lot more control on the protection of my property than maybe I was expecting to have, you know, Windows environment.
Yeah, it's not often used, but we can go all the way down to an individual file and give someone permissions to that individual file. Right-click a file, add a person to it, and say they can't see it yet.
Perfect.
So the last piece I'll go through is regulatory compliance. This is, you know, within the last 5-6 years, SOLIDWORKS is focused on adding things to the software that helps companies, you know, meet these or comply with these regulatory groups, things like ISO, FDA, and ITAR. The disclaimer here is that we do not, it's not like once you have PDM, you're ISO certified. It gives you tools to be able to help you become ISO certified. There's a list of requirements that you have to meet, and we help out with a lot of those. So just as an example, I pulled off some regulatory examples off the website, and kind of tying in the big picture idea, which is stamped here in red, and then what that ties to the actual tech of inside of SOLIDWORKS PDM that we can use to meet that standard. So things like the FDA environment, if you're doing any medical devices, they you can see here it says we need to adhere to and enforce a double electronic signature. That means that you're typing in your credentials, your username and password to log into the vault, and then you're also typing in your username and password to send it through the workflow process. So when you transition from something from being a work in progress to being approved or being released, that we'd get challenged again with that username and password. And that's just a double challenge for transitions. I'll hop into the software and show you that one here in a moment. Then local data. So this means what's on your laptop when you're traveling. So ITAR is usually the one we hear about the most, where if we're going outside of the U.S. and we have international files, military-style files, they cannot travel outside U.S. borders. So we have what that ties to in the tech piece of it. Just a checkbox to be able to turn on is clear the cache on logout. That means that our local view of the vault, when we log in, we get to see all of this information when we're on site, and then when we log off and we travel, it'll clear out all of that information from the vault. When we get back to the office, we log back in, it'll refresh that information. And then just the standard regulatory things of process control. Workflow and file history. I'll jump into the vault and show you some of these things. You need to be able to access the standard operating procedure information quickly. So that means what what does the process look like for a file? How does it get from creating the file all the way to releasing it and getting Rev A, Rev B, Rev C, and then proving that it went through that. So an audit trail and history of that file. So let's jump into the software a little bit and show some of these. So the first one I'm going to show is the double sign-off. So we're still here in the admin window, and if I pick on a transition, we can actually change these so that this authentication is turned on, and that's going to turn on the ability to where it's going to challenge every time it goes through the transition. Not only do you need to log into the vault, but you also need to type in your password again to get it through there. So really simple tech to be able to comply to these regulatory groups. Local data, so if I go to any one of the groups, I'm going to go to engineering and open that group. And then there is a cache options, and we can choose specific folders. Maybe if you're doing a mixed environment of military work and just consumer or industry work, we could have those divided into different folders, and then pick, maybe I know that Project 7 has really sensitive data in it that can't travel over borders. So I can say to clear the cache during logout for that particular folder. And just like permissions for folders, if I pick that top level and check mark that, it's going to clear all folders out every time I log out. And then lastly is just process control. And what's funny is I showed up to a company once that said, hey, there's going to be some ISO audit people coming in. We need to be able to prove it. Can you show us how? I was like, well, this is going to take a couple minutes, and that's about it. I say take a snapshot of your workflow. So I've got a tool just called Snag It Here, and I'm going to take a picture of it. There's the proof of my my procedure that files go through. And then I'm going to log into the vault, and they can just basically name any file that they want, and we'll go to it. Just go into Project 2 here, my design data, and pick a random file here and go to display history. And that's going to show any comments that were made during each one of these actions, the time and date stamped for when it happened, what user did it, what version it was at, and what revision it went to, the names of the states, and the transitions that happened. So that's an audit for an individual file. We show the history of the file here, and we can show them the workflow, and that kind of proves the process. It's a piece of it because we're just dealing with the software piece. They're going to ask about other process things. Kind of the disclaimer I talked about earlier, we just give you tools to be able to help you out with that. So regulatory compliance, really controlling data and processes and giving you tools to be able to help you out with that. Dennis, I think you had a question for this one.
Yep, let me start that one. And we're interested in what type of issues might face your company in protecting your intellectual property. If you take a minute to reply to that, that's going to be, we have one more poll question to wrap up at the end here. But this one, I think, something new too, Greg, that is just popping up in the last few months, kind of along the lines of the ITAR. There's a military spec that a lot of our customers are being challenged with that came out called NIST 800-171. And it takes the level of control a little more granular even as to controlling what people who receive an email or a copy of a file can do and who they can share it with. If it's an encrypted file, it manages that type of work as well. If anybody would like information on that, we're working with another company to provide that level of detail and control over our vault here moving forward as well. You can shoot Greg or I an email at the end, and we'll be happy to get more information back to you on that solution. So it looks like I got a few more people coming in on this poll yet, and we'll wind this down in a second. Give it about 5 more seconds here, and then we'll share the results on this. Okay, closing that out, and let's share what we find here. So, yeah, guarding from competitors. I guess that's a fairly common concern these days. We hear more and more about intellectual property being reverse engineered. Those two things kind of go hand in hand, guarding from competitors and as well as reverse engineering. Something new on there is hearing more and more about protecting your company's brand. We have a lot of customers that have unique processes, whether that's in the automation equipment or if it's in product design. And having that brand, it takes you a long time to build that reputation, but all it takes is a short while for somebody to get a hold of something and start making knockoffs that maybe don't conform with the quality that you adhere to, and it begins to affect your brand as well. So I think we'll start to hear more about that coming up over the next couple of years, as well as this NIST requirement. Greg, any thoughts that you have on that regard?
No, I think it's exactly what I expected. I think most people are concerned with getting it out of competitors' hands.
Yep, that's the big one there. And let me bring up our last poll here. And we'd like to hear what you think about the feedback that you've seen here today. Is this hitting the mark that you're hoping to learn about? Is there more information that you'd like to get from us on this subject? Do we start to kind of get the tip of the iceberg on this subject and you'd like to learn more? Certainly appreciate your feedback. And again, I don't know, Greg, do you have our emails as we wrap up?
Yeah, I can get back to that. Once you close the poll,
Yeah,
we'll get those listed on here.
Yeah, let's put those up for reference if anybody's got any follow-up questions, or again, if you'd like a copy of this archive to share with other people, we want to make that available here for you as well. So it looks like winding down here, give it another 5 seconds and we'll close this. Appreciate everybody's time coming in today. We promised to take somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes, so we're coming up on that point here now. If there are any questions that you'd like to throw out there, we'll still stick on for a minute or two here. Let's close this and share the results. Looks like we did a pretty decent job on answering a lot of questions and started the conversation with a number of people as well. So hopefully we look forward to getting back with those that would like to talk more about this. And let me hide the poll here. And
just wrap up with the we went over accessing the vault, the different ways that you can get into the vault, being flexible with remote employees but still being secure. We talked about setting up users and groups, which is really kind of the foundation of setting up security for your data, and then assigning permissions to those users and groups, and then a couple of tidbits at the end about how we help out with regulatory compliance. And kind of wrapping up with our tagline there, it gets you the right data, the right place at the right time. And then, as Dennis mentioned, our contact information on this last slide here. Again, I'll just reiterate what Dennis said, and we appreciate your guys' time.
Yep, thanks a lot, Greg. Looking here, I don't see that we've got any follow-up questions at the moment, so I think we'll be wrapping things up.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep, thank you again.